Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
The link is on the chat box, please. In case you guys also need to share it, please go ahead.
Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Jessica, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
So it's around 500 now.
Yeah, the house is full. 30 to go.
They're all in waiting rooms. Just a minute. Okay,
There we go.
that's it.
Yeah.
Right.
that's it.
Participants, please share the links with your colleagues. The YouTube link, they can come in from there. This has to be done by you since you are in the meeting.
500.
Can we start now?
Ji, sir.
How many are there? More than 500. William, can we start?
Yes, sir, please. Please do.
Good afternoon and welcome to all of you. We are meeting after about 4 to 5 months, and we hope everybody is fine, safe, and healthy. I think nobody is marrying the COVID-19 now. You know, our forum, USA Vision, to enhance the skill of our young India, to invest in modern educational tools, so that our teachers becomes the global teacher. Unless we make our teachers as global teachers, we cannot provide our student as a global human beings. That is the vision of our forum. USF is devoted to make you as a global teacher. Vision of our founder members, vision of our existing governing body is that only. USF has already conducted various webinars during the pandemic also, and thereafter also. Last session, few months back, was MCQ that more than 300-400 teachers have attended. So now MCQ is a new mode of evaluations, and Cbse, ICSE, and all other modes are going to follow that. We have conducted these webinars, training webinars, by engaging the various gifted organizations such as Aditya Birla Academy, Global School Foundation Singapore, one organization from Indonesia, and beside that, HJ College, Bombay. HJ College is one of the finest B.Ed colleges in India. They are producing the best B.Ed teachers. So with them also we engaged, and in fact, they have conducted the sessions for 3-4 months continuously. Now we are going to collaborate with CADREC, Baroda-based organization, and their team, their expert team, because expert team are the real expert educators having more than 15 to 20 years experience in educational sector. The main team members, a smiling face here, Bhavna Tandon, Ishita Verma, and Kritika Mansingh. She's only enjoying good weather in Dehradun or Hardwar. Balance, we are under hot weather. So she is taking the session from the Dehradun with a cool mind.
Pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Today's topic is competency-based learning. So now I request Neela Madam to introduce our revered guest speakers and take it forward.
Thank you, sir. With the permission of the participants, I'll just be very, very brief, please, and the main speakers. Bhavna Tandon, ma'am, holding a master's degree in clinical psychology, diploma in fashion designing, has over 18 years of experience as an educationist. I'll just bring it absolutely short if you allow me to.
Please, ma'am, please.
Yes, please. And ma'am, we are honored to have you. It's a pleasure. Ishita Verma has about 30 years in corporate corridors and with real passion for education. She brings an interesting spread of insights into the CADREC team. A gold medalist in education management. She's also written many articles for Indian Express, blogs, and held many parenting sessions and so on. And Kritika Mansingh, as sir is envying your location, a certified guidance counselor and cyber safety advocate. She's also a UGC NET scholar in sociology and holds a double master's in advertising and communications and other sociology sectors. Ma'am, we are really honored to have three of you. In case you need to say something more about yourself, please go ahead. With this, ma'am, I hand over the entire team to you. All the best. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Keria sir and Neelam ma'am, for such a lovely introduction and such a hearty welcome. Indeed, we truly feel blessed and privileged to be sharing this forum with you and to interact with the teacher fraternity from across Maharashtra at such a large scale.
Gujarat, Goa.
Gujarat
okay.
and Goa. So I think the overwhelming registrations for this session clearly show that the teachers are always geared up to upskill themselves to meet the demands of the 21st century education. And we are really glad to have all of you here with us today. So on this note, I would begin today's presentation.
Before that, I must tell all the audience there will be 4,000 participants today. 4,000 participants today, and more than 120 schools across Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Goa. They are part of this webinar to welcome and learn from the expert team. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We hope that we do justice today. So starting with competency-based education for middle and secondary stages, I want to first focus on what's wrong with the current education system. So that's our first slide for today. What's really wrong with the current education system? Many of us are already aware that, it only focuses on marks. With a result, our children may show brilliance, but they may completely lack the real world or 21st century skills, so to say. Especially people who are in the industry, they say kids, when they come out of their colleges, are just not ready for the work sphere because they are, because they are not at all ready with all the other skills or competencies which are required to work within a professional team-based organization. Okay, may I continue? Yes. So they only know content. They don't know how to do teamwork. They don't know how to use their skills and abilities. And they just do not know how to do so many things which are part of working in the real world with people and the environment around them. Another reality check is that there is a shifting trend now. And this is the newspaper item as recent as 20th September 2022, which is like 4 days back, which says, how to study over how to score. It is now becoming important, even in the parents' eyes, that they're shifting from Indian schools to IB, or they're opting for IB and IGCSE schools because there is a concept-based learning happening in those schools. The common consensus is that these schools offer deeper, long-term real-world understanding and competitive edge to students. And those who can afford it, well, they are willing to make the shift. So this is where the problem is. And as passionate and responsible educators, many of us often sit back and wonder about things like, are my students learning? Is my teaching effective? Are the students reaching the goals that we have designed at the beginning of the academic year? Am I even looking at the goals and seeing whether these children are meeting those goals? And if the learned knowledge, skills, and ability is only for scoring marks, or is it really going to last them a lifetime? So if you have these questions troubling you, then you are at the right place at the right time, as you will get your answers today. So moving on, let's begin with, what is this big buzz about nowadays? So NEP has brought out a lot of new jargon in 2020, which everybody's talking about nowadays, like a fashion statement, the fads in the educational world, so to say. And one of them is competency-based education. So let's for a moment think about why the world is moving towards competency-based education and what exactly it is. So the revised definition of CBE, or the competency-based education, was initially released in 2011 and further revised in 2019. And then finally, it was given prominence in NEP 2020 because our children had failed to make a mark in the international assessment surveys like PISA, TIMSS, TED-Ms, Formats, and PIRLS. Countries like China, Finland, Singapore were at the top and are at the top as their education system focuses on building competencies. Whereas Indian education system promotes rote memorization. And that's exactly what we began our session with. So it's about time that we moved away from our traditional system to CBE. And what we can clearly understand is that these worries were just not ours in the classroom, but even the government and education department have now woken up and are worried about these gaps. So CBE is one of the strategies they are pushing to plug in to fill in those gaps and make the children world ready. Here are some of the newspaper articles that have published in the last 1 year with the headlines mentioning competency-based assessment. And of course, our eminent Prime Minister has said that competency-based assessment of foundational skills and basic learning outcomes and competencies have to be pushed into schools. The diagnostic assessments will be conducted across all schools for grade 3, 5, and 8 to analyze the performance of the schools in imparting the right education and to improve the TL practices to optimize learning. And all this you will find in the National Education Policy. So you might want to take a note of the references to CBE in the NEP guidelines in para number 4.34 on page number 17. You can make a note of that. And the gist is covered here with major points highlighted for your reference. Essentially, it thrusts upon the complete revamping of the curriculum from pre-K to grade 12. It will focus on real learning and learning how to learn, and the child should be developing holistically as well as a well-rounded individual. Secondly, the assessment has to also shift its focus from marks to lifelong learning, conceptual clarity, and higher order thinking. Furthermore, the focus on assessment will be on promoting learning. The assessment results are going to be an archive of data, which will then be analyzed to further revamp the teaching learning process. And lastly, it has to be optimized and equitable, which means we can't have one size fits all approach in the class. We have to reach out to each child and cater to his or her individual learning needs. So NEP 2020 is already there as a guideline for you. And in addition to it, you can also refer to the Cbse's resource book for teachers, along with the Cise handbook on CBE. With all this information as a base, let's see what we are going to cover in today's session. So we come to the bird's eye view. We are going to understand what is the concept of competency and its components. We will appreciate the benefits of CBE and its impact on schools. We will also view aspects of curricular change and change in mindset, and furthermore, explore the ways to implement CBL and CBA, that is competency-based learning and competency-based assessment in classrooms through varied examples. So let's watch a short video on what is the shift going to look like.
I'm delighted that the British Council, in partnership with the Central Board of Secondary Education, is working on competency-based education.
Rote learning has been a common practice in schools across India, a system defined by memorization, a system that focuses more on content-based learning.
We stand alongside the Indian government to bring the best of UK expertise and knowledge to support the implementation of the National Education Policy 2020 in schools across the country through this project.
The new National Education Policy 2020 envisages a significant shift in the education ecosystem in India. It aims at preparing students for the 21st century and lays emphasis on competency-based education rather than an education which tests rote learning.
With the visionary National Education Policy 2020, the focus has now shifted from content to competency. The new policy calls for a breakdown in artificial barriers between subjects and development of higher-order thinking skills. It highlights the need for an assessment system that encourages real learning. Competency-based learning enables high-quality education in real-life context. It emphasizes on predefined competencies at each level of the student's learning journey and takes them beyond the confines of their textbook, linking their learning to life.
We've worked to ensure that the assessments which will be created assess both the higher-order thinking skills, such as analysis and evaluation, and the recall and application of knowledge. We've taken good practice from a variety of sources and worked with Cbse experts to design a framework which will deliver valid assessment of these higher order skills and which will be well aligned to the learning outcomes set out in the NCERT curriculum.
To support competency-based education, British Council entered into a partnership with the Central Board of Secondary Education in March 2020 and launched the Competency-Based Education Project. As a part of this project, British Council and its knowledge partner Alpha Plus, in partnership with Cbse India, present the Competency-Based Assessment Framework. Designed in collaboration with UK experts, the assessment framework provides professional development to education system leaders, teachers, and examination designers. Under the direction and guidance of Cbse, the project uses assessment as a driver and motivator of change in teaching quality in the classroom. Overall, the Competency-Based Education Project provides mentorship support for the teachers, embeds new learning into classroom teaching practice, guides reading, English, maths, and science teachers of classes 6 to 10 to drive practical learning, strengthens the capacity of schools to create high-quality competency-based question papers. The Competency-Based Education Project aims to bring about systemic change in teaching, learning, and assessment practices by 2024. The project will not only make a lasting impact on the education ecosystem, but will also help students realize their potential so that they can fully contribute to making the country and the world safe, sustainable, prosperous, and peaceful.
So this is how British Council is helping us with the competency-based education and is working with various organizations to optimize learning. And as you saw, the framework will cover 3 subjects, that is English, maths, and science. And the pilot project will take off in selected Kendra Vidyalayas and Navodaya Vidyalayas, and also in the Union Territory of Chandigarh and some other private schools across the country. And by almost 2024, that is 2 years later, thousands of schools would have adopted the CBE approach. And now that you know so much about competency, let me know what does it really mean to you. So I request all of you to quickly put it down in the chat box, what a term or a phrase that comes to your mind when you hear the word competency. Yes, teachers, waiting for your responses in the chat box. Let me see how many of you get it right. Expertise, skills, yes. Application-based approach, creativity, excellence, inherent skill, yes. Being ready for life, capabilities, critical thinking, practical knowledge, to be able to face real life challenges, proficiency, Design thinking, adaptability, globalization. Wow. Okay. Yes. Yes. A lot of you know it, but yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, teachers, for putting in your responses. So let's truly understand what is competency and what the term really means and what does it encompass. So it includes specific potential, combining 4 elements to help anyone perform a task, a critical function with ease, and with consistency through various situations in life. And yes, your responses reflected this statement very clearly. So the 4 components being knowledge, skills, and ability, attitude and values, and behavior are part of competency. So a combination of all this can either be acquired or it could be innate within oneself, which means you are gifted in certain aspects. So the focus is clearly on targets and goals. So when I'm talking about a competency, I'm talking about what should I be able to do and achieve, which many of you wrote in the chat box. So it is visible and holistic because what I do with my knowledge, skill, ability, attitude, and behavior is visible to the world outside, because I would be doing something or demonstrating something to others that I'm competent in carrying out that particular task, right? So for example, if I'm able to ride a bicycle from point A to point B and everyone can see me riding it on the road while I'm following traffic rules, managing the bicycle properly, and then I'm competent in riding a bicycle, right? So it is also holistic. Why? Because I'm using my psychomotor, I'm using my knowledge, I'm also using my sense of the world around me, and I'm aware of and compassionate towards the stray animals and people crossing the road. So it becomes a holistic kind of performance. Okay, so I'm using all my abilities to ride a bicycle. And in competency-based education, competencies are explicit, okay, which means that they are very clearly and very well defined against the learning outcomes. And I'm sure you all know what the learning outcomes are. When you prepare a lesson plan, the learning outcomes start with a typical phrase, at the end of this unit, children will be able to learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, correct? So you list them down using verbs, and then the level of attainment is the proficiency of being able to meet the competency, which is matched or mapped against these LOs, which are measurable. And now measuring how, we'll come to that with lots of examples later on. And the degree of proficiency to which I have to attain the competency will define what kind of a learner am I, what I can do, how I perceive things and behave, and how I deal with life and in various situations. So the first competency that we talked about was knowledge. It's a theoretical, conceptual understanding of any subject or a topic that we deliver in the classroom at all times as teachers, right? So the knowledge in math, the knowledge in science, the knowledge about music, art, health and wellness, environment, etc. And this is the cognitive domain aspect, right? So it can be gained, acquired, and enhanced. Once I begin to understand the concept of numbers in the foundational level, I know how to handle or recognize and use numbers. Then by the preparatory level, I know how to use mathematical operations to use numbers. And then when I go into the secondary level, I know situations in life when I know which is the element, which is the formula, or which is the strategy I have to use and apply in order to solve that particular problem, right? So I'm also gaining and acquiring new knowledge. It is increasing. When I gain and acquire, it increases, and I'm applying that knowledge into the real world. So the source of knowledge can be anything. It can be the text, it can be audiovisual, your own experiences also increase your knowledge, and etc. So it is a visible characteristic because when I'm talking about knowledge, even if I'm conversing, it's visible to others, right? You can see me talk right now. So if I'm writing or drawing something, it is also equally visible. So however, having said that, knowledge does not necessarily only mean that I can physically perform a related task, even if I understand the steps of what is to be done. Just because just because the physics teacher has taught the children in the school how a plane flies, doesn't mean that children can fly a plane. Can you? No. Can the students fly a plane? No, they can't. So not always having knowledge means, that it gets translated into an ability and competency to do something. So if you have the knowledge, doesn't mean you will be able to do it. So as per NEP 2020, this competency aspect of knowledge, it must not only stick to what is the core subject domain, it must expand out or extend to embrace the same topic in the context of cross-curricular content, knowledge of India, or your knowledge of the world, sustainable development goals, and global citizenship aspects. The second competency is skills. It's the practical ability to perform an action with determined results. Obviously, it is psychomotor because we are using our various parts of the body and maybe some other accessories and tools that are required to do a certain task, right? So it is a learned behavior and it can be improved over time. For example, during COVID times, I would watch YouTube videos to learn how to cut hair for my family. It was a skill that I didn't have earlier, but I learned it while watching YouTube. So with each haircut, I kept improving my skill. And I'm sure if I had a coach, I would have definitely mastered the skill of haircutting. So yes, definitely a particular skill is measurable and visible. For example, if you're talking about the skill of being able to use various tools for dissection of a plant in the biolab, I can definitely say that the child has been able to attain the goal. And this child, one child has been able to attain the goal, but the other is yet to attain that goal. So it is visible and it can be measured. So I can measure their performance through observable characteristics, a way of seeing who is more adept at handling that particular skill, right? So as per NEP 2020, to develop skills, we don't only stick to theory. We have to give children hands-on experiences, experiential learning, real-life application, and various case studies where they can actually demonstrate that they are being able to use that knowledge and skill. Next, we come to ability. Ability is an extension of skill. See, there is a fine difference. There's a fine line. So ability is an extension of skill, which means once I have the knowledge how something works and I know how to do it through training, then I can say that I have the ability to do something. I know how to make chapatis or cook good food. My mother taught me that, right? But now I'm able to make it on my own, keeping the kitchen safety rules in mind. But some of my friends just don't know how to make a chapati. So many of us struggle at making chapati, or a round chapati, so to say, or a thin, well-leveled chapati, or cook good food. They say that's not their cup of tea. So in some ways, it is an innate characteristic that combines knowledge and skill. Once you know swimming, for example, once you know swimming, once you know driving, once you know sewing or rowing, you will never forget it again. Yeah, will you? I have never ridden a bicycle in last 20 years, but today, if you give me one, I'll be able to ride it conveniently. So it becomes enduring. It becomes a personality trait, a part of you, or a talent that makes you perform a task well. So it's inherently acquired and can be developed externally without formal training. For example, some people are good at painting. You can teach me painting, but there are just those born artists, Don't we say he's a born sportsman or a cricketer for Sachin Tendulkar? Or, so when we say a born star, we are talking about this innate ability, right? And because it is innate, it can be a little difficult to train. No matter how many times you tell me to sing like Lata Mangeshkar, even if I am a good singer, or if you tell Shreya Ghoshal to sing like Lata Mangeshkar, she'll not be able to do it. It's difficult, okay? So when we are talking about innate, it is visible or invisible. It is invisible. Innate is something that is not visible to you. So, but MI plays a huge role. Can any of you tell me what is MI here? Very easy. MI.
Multiple intelligence.
Yes, perfect. It is multiple intelligence. So yes, it is as per the NEP 2020, this particular competency of fusing knowledge and skill to develop an ability. It must eventually internally empower students with 21st century skills, a design thinking mindset, and human skills. So here you see the slide, which is the overlap of skills and ability when knowledge and skills is used. And then through refinement, you acquire the ability to do something. Okay, that's how they overlap. Next is competency number 4, of course, is the socio-emotional aspect, the affective domain aspect of competency, which involves values, beliefs, and attitude. Now, attitude and beliefs are internal. Those are things that we believe in, we keep, we keep it in our mind. It drives us in our life as we perceive and experience life. So behavior is what comes outwardly in expressing our beliefs, attitudes, and values, and it can be visible or it could be invisible. For example, if I'm really happy about something, I can just, throw up my hands in air and greet you with a beaming smile. And if I'm really not happy with someone, I may sulk for days or curse that person in my mind, and say that I can't stand him or I can't stand her. So it would be visible or invisible. So finally, when we look at the competencies of knowledge, skills, and ability, attitude and belief, and behavior, how do we measure whether I have attained it? That is, measuring to see what is the level of proficiency one has for that particular task. So it is the attainment of very explicit, measurable competencies. It is demonstrated in a consistent manner. That means in similar situations across life or in different parts of the world, I should be able to use the same or heightened set of knowledge, skills, attitude, and behavior in order to solve that issue or fulfill that task. And since it is acquired, it can be increased and improved upon, and it is visible, holistic, visible, right? So now, how do you measure whether I have attained competency? It's against a proficiency scale, right? So the level to which I have acquired the ability to do something can be measured in this proficiency scale. This is one example where the terms, missing, getting started, approaching, proficient, and advanced are mentioned. And within those, there are 2 layers. In missing, you have the insufficient evidence or the assignment has not been turned in. That means you have just not done it. Can we just mute the participants, please? Can I request the host to mute the participants? Thank you so much. So in missing, you have insufficient evidence or the assignment has not been turned in. That means you have just not done it. And under getting started, new to the skill, building the background knowledge, but still not there. Under approaching, demonstrate and apply a partial understanding and needs guidance. And under proficient, usually demonstrates and apply own understanding and show readiness to move up to the next level. And in the advanced, of course, there is an extension of the understanding of these skills and learning targets and consistently show proficiency in performing the same way in handling similar situations. So that is the highest level of attainment, right? So this is another example with beginner, intermediate, and advanced sections, and each of them have 2 levels again. So this is the Common European Framework of Reference. So this is the Common European Framework of Reference, and the previous one was just another example. So as we can see, competencies in competency-based education are goals and targets that are set against the learning outcomes in a particular chapter. You will see later subject-related examples as we move along in the presentation today. So basically, what is competency? It is set against learning outcomes, and they are prescribed targeted goals against standard. The level to which I have attained competence is a proficiency, which is measurable, and it can be put on a rubric scale, like we showed you. And when I'm showing mastery, it means it is the highest scale of proficiency, where without fail, I'm consistently performing at the highest level of being able to do something using knowledge, skill, attitude, and behavior. So dear viewers, Cbe is a model which is student-centered, focused on mastery of competencies based on learning outcomes. Yes, here is that model. It's very easy to understand. You can take a snapshot. And competencies are observable and measurable performance against age or grade appropriate standards. Cbe also ensures learning with independence and success in demonstrating proficiency of competencies consistently in new contexts. The focus is on student agency, wherein students are free to choose their learning pace and are owners of their own learning, which we don't see in the traditional system. And Cbe also focuses on LOs, what a student can actually do, not on learning inputs, what a student must know. And finally, competency is all about having the ability to apply or transfer learning with critical thinking, innovative thinking, and problem-solving skill as crucial components of Cbe. Now, these are words which are familiar to you, but what you must realize or take away today is that the advancement to the next level can only happen after the student has attained mastery of the competency. Not how we do it in the traditional system, or we are doing it in our current education system. Even if the child has not mastered a particular skill, we still allow the child to move into the next grade. So that is something Cbe doesn't prescribe. So the advancement can only happen after the student has attained mastery of the competency. With this, I would like to end my session here, and I now invite my colleague from Quadrac, Miss Ishita Verma, to take over from here and explain Cbe or the technical aspects of Cbe in greater detail. Over to you, Ishita ma'am.
Thank you very much, Bhavna ma'am, and a very, very warm welcome to all the participants in the program today. And I'm very, very happy to know that you are all here to explore the concept of competency-based education, as we need to understand it and take it into our classrooms. Bhavna ma'am has very clearly told you why it is a necessity, and the world has recognized that it's a necessity, and probably the Indian education system is one of the traditional systems that needs to wake up, revamp, and emerge from the traditional goals and come into something which is more internationally relevant and ready for the 21st century. So with all that Bhavna ma'am has told you, we have now understood what competency means, what it encompasses, what the components are, and hence, since it's now such an integral part of education, we need to realize that there are a lot of terms and names that float around in the education fraternity and forum. So competency-based education is also very loosely referred to as mastery-based education, proficiency-based education, outcome-based education, and even performance-based education. So basically, when we look at it, it is a tri-point focus because it encompasses three aspects to education: competency-based instruction, competency-based learning, and competency-based assessment. So when we look at the traditional model versus the Cbe model, and we are focusing first on what is competency-based instruction, let us see what the difference is. In our current traditional system of classrooms, and I know many of you have come away from it, so maybe it is not relevant for you, but we have typically had a teacher-centered classroom where knowledge has been transmitted in a one-way approach from the instructor. Usually children tend to be more passive than actively engaged in the learning process. So here I'm not talking about passively sitting and not listening or doing the random activity the teacher says, but actually through the entire process of learning in our system, I think children are still really, really passive in the learning process. You would agree with that. Of course, it is led with authority, and the assessment of learning is happening more than assessment for or as learning. I'm sure you know that there are three types of assessment at the three levels at which the assessment is done. We all know of learning is the most formal, and it is testing at the end of a unit or a chapter, and you get a complete picture of the entire process of the learning. The for learning is when the entire journey of learning is happening and the assessment is done as a continual process. And assessment as learning is when you make it a little more 360-degree view and you allow children to self-assess and peer assess. So that is assessment as learning. And of course, with the current system, we are always telling children how to go for the correct answer. So we are teaching through a textbook. Our knowledge is confined within the framework of the textbook. And I know so many times I've had heads and myself being in that position, teachers coming and say, ma'am, syllabus to khatam hi nahi hoga. Because we consider all the chapters in the textbook as the syllabus. So yes, when we are driven to that, we don't have room, we don't have opportunity, and we don't give children the scope to think beyond what we have decided to teach them. So learning is only happening for the limited topics, and it is happening only to teach them how to write the correct answer in the exam. And hence it becomes one-dimensional, and it is creating a really unhealthy sort of a scenario and spirit of children comparing their performance with other children and not so much about how much they have improved within themselves, and they become very, very individualistic and selfish. When you look at competency-based education on the other side, in the column which is on the right, you realize that the whole concept, approach, and the mindset is completely different. Because here, learning is not being transmitted by the teacher, but it is being constructed by the students as they experience the whole learning process. It is much more active. It is much more active because children are engaged in activities, they are engaged in researching, they are engaged in thinking and sharing their knowledge with each other. And so a lot of social, cognitive, psychomotor, all the domain developments are happening together through the CBE approach. Of course, the ongoing assessment ensures that at every step of the way in the process of learning, the children is being guided, controlled, and given the right kind of constructive feedback for improvement. So because the child is looking at something holistically without the framework of a chapter or fixed topics, the learning is happening deeper because you're not really putting a limit to how much the child has to go. And it becomes multidimensional because you're allowing the children to learn through their area of interest. They're learning at their own pace. They may even choose to do it at their own time, get additional information through research, and share with everyone in the class. So what happens with that kind of sharing and involved learning is it becomes a collaborative process, and hence it becomes a supportive process and not individualistic. So when you're looking at competency-based education, the components of CBL for learning is it empowers a child to take charge of the how, why, when, and what of learning. They are completely in charge of what it is that they want to do through the learning process in gaining new knowledge. And definitely, as Bhavna ma'am said, it has to be guided by learning objectives. So you have a chapter, and I'm sure through the CISE manual and the Cbse manual, which you will see, the NCERT manual, it's very beautifully given how for every topic, you have learning objectives, you have learning outcomes, and your assessment has to be mapped to the learning outcomes. What Cbse is telling you to do is when you have those ready learning outcomes, map the competencies in terms of for that particular outcome, what is the knowledge, skill, ability, behavior, and attitude I want my children to have? So that is what needs to be changed when we are looking at planning in that. Students receive timely and differentiated support based on their individual needs. And of course, the common expectations for learning of the skills, the knowledge, skill, attitude, values, and behavior are clearly defined in advance. So children must know what we are expecting them to achieve. So we don't do the planning, keep it to ourselves, secretive, hidden in a bank vault, and then just throw a wild something, a sort of a lesson to the children without them knowing what is expected from them. And then when they perform, we say, oh, you were not able to achieve it. If I know where I have to go, then I can plan for my journey to the next place. And learning is pretty much the same thing. If children know where you want to take them in the learning journey, they will be ready for it. They will push themselves. They will push their own limits to reach those particular targeted goals. The strategies that we will use in the classroom, we have to ensure, A, that they are varied, because we just talked about multiple intelligences. Your class is full of differentiated learners. not only in the concept of how they learn, but also in terms of the levels of learning. Some of them grasp quickly, some of them are average, and some of them are so swift they keep you on your toes. So we need to address that as well. And we have to make sure that the equity part, not, we teach with equality. We kind of give a one-sided delivery to the whole class thinking everybody's going to understand the same way. We have to look at equity, which means we have to reach out to each child differently in order to ensure they are coming up to the same level that we want them to achieve. And students progress based on evidence of mastery, which is what Bhavna ma'am also talked about, the proficiency of attainment of the competencies. So we are looking at to what degree they have attained the mastery or proficiency, and not the grade, which is going to come at the end of a formal test, right? Okay, I'm just going to shut these off because this is blurring the vision. So learning is organized by the child's ability to transfer knowledge, apply the skills, use his beliefs and values, and transfer this into the real life context and more. So how it will help students is they will develop confidence because they master skills. They learn to express themselves and respect others' opinion because there's so much of sharing and supported and collaborative learning happening. They'll believe the focus is really on student agency. When I'm talking about student agency, I'm talking about students being in charge, responsible, and accountable for their own learning. And naturally, because it is collaborative, their communication skills also improve. They become critical thinkers, and because of our assessment of their performance, we also give them constructive feedback for improvement. And when we do that, we are ensuring that they take a step back to know where they have missed out, put in that extra effort, and then come forward, which is why deep learning happens. They also begin to ask questions. So instead of you asking questions to teachers, let children ask questions from you about how to then inquire for more knowledge about the topic you're exploring. And they show higher levels of engagement and commitment. So when we are looking at what competency-based education includes in terms of assessment, because we did instruction and learning, then assessment, I've been talking about it, is basically collecting evidence or making a sort of a very informed judgment about where my children are in terms of those learning objectives and learning outcomes. How far have they reached? So when the assessment is the what information, I need to analyze it. First, I must know what am I going to assess them with? How am I going to assess them? How will I collect the information about how far they have reached? How will I use this information in order to ensure that the children are going to improve and then go further? Because remember, in Cbe, advancement can only happen when I have attained the previous learning levels. So we need to assess by generating information that can be acted upon. So when I'm gathering information, many schools are using LMSs, and I'm sure you're recording the students' progress. Please judiciously look at that information, analyze it like managers. Look at the figures. I mean, just pretend as a teacher you've become a chartered accountant and you have to do a complete analysis of the figures in front of you. Look at the figures and let them speak to you. Let the figures tell you about where which child is and where which child is struggling and what is the individualized child-centric support you need to give the child to make sure that the child is competent to reach that learning outcome. So to recognize, plan, and monitor and accredit the learning for children. So it will give you give a focus for not only the learner, also for the teacher, because it will help you to effectively plan your lessons. It will also help you to plan the activities in terms of the learning outcomes and the lesson plan. You will be able to record, analyze, and evaluate the assessment, right? It also challenges and motivates the learners because it gives them a tremendous scope for doing things their way, doing things beyond boundaries, and doing things in a collaborative, supportive environment. Yes, now this is a very important one. Many of us, we take exams, we declare the marks, we tell the children, you've not done well, you need to work hard. I've heard this many times. You need to work hard, you need to improve. That is not really going to help. When we're talking about competency-based assessment, we're actually talking about going down to helping the child realize where is it that there is still a gap in meeting the proficiency level for that particular outcome. So there are two terms here that I would like you to know. I'm sure many of you know it. One is feedback and one is feed forward. So let's see what is feedback. Feedback focuses on the student's current performance, and it may simply justify the grade that has been rewarded or the marks that have been given. But when you give feed forward, you're looking at the subsequent assignments, activities, and opportunities which will offer constructive guidance on how to improve. So remember, there are two terms. Feedback is absolute of where the child is, and feed forward is how you will guide the child to further move ahead and improve. It will also reduce the learner's anxiety, because norm-based assessment is where you're giving an absolute score, and you're also going to compare the score in terms of a class average by comparing one child's result with the other children, which is why you always have an analysis of results as he came first in class, she came second in class, these children are above the class average, these children are below the class average. But when you're thinking of competency-based education, there are two different types of assessment. We don't have time to explore it, but you may want to look it up. One is norm-referenced assessment, criterion referenced assessment, and ipsative assessment. Norm is what I've talked about. We still need to look at criterion referenced assessment and ipsative assessment, which is going to be absolutely in line with what competency-based education is talking about. So when you're planning for competency-based learning, there is a role of assessment in the learning cycle, because the assessment is going to drive the further learning, and you have to redefine your lesson plan and your activities in order to make sure that through that assessment, whatever information you got, you'll be able to empower the children better. So don't forget, it's a cyclical process, and the advancement is only going to happen if you can analyze the assessments. So how can you leverage? You must redefine how you're assessing a children, go beyond the textbook questions, reframing the same questions, shuffling the questions from a true and false to a multiple choice to a fill in the blank. Push for HOTS. You will all remember the Bloom's taxonomy triangle, right? So there are 6 layers in that. Typically, if you look across all schools, most of the questions you will find they border around remember, understand, and apply. That's about it. Application-based questions. Very few questions are case study, real context-based questions, which will require the children to analyze, evaluate, and give an opinion, right? Develop rubrics. Bhavna ma'am showed you some very fine rubrics which are being used in the Western world, where actually you are not giving an absolute mark. You are rating a child's attainment of proficiency and competency on a scale. So then the child also feels, I'm getting there, I'm not here. And in order to reach the next level, this is what I have to do. Create standards-based report cards with details about not just the content, but also list down what are the targets, what are the goals.
Manoj. Manoj.
Could we please request the participants to mute the mic? Sorry about that. Create a standards-based report card. So a competency-based assessment believes in age and grade-related standards for the minimum levels. Having said that, it does not mean that once a child has achieved that into the mastery zone, you will stop the child from wanting to learn and inquire further by saying, that's not what we do in this class. You will do it later in the next class when you move up, which is probably why it's very few schools in India that have room, scope. Maybe practically it is very difficult, but they do have room and scope for allowing children, say in grade 5, who has mastered mathematics or is very good with languages, and that particular child is able to move up and pursue that particular subject 2 grades higher than the current level. Yes, a lot of challenges with timetabling, lot of challenges with planning how the child will move into a higher age group, who will look after the child in the higher age group. Likewise, it can also be in the reverse order. You may have a child who is a little anxious about mathematics, is in grade 7, still not there with the, the completion of the 6th grade level mathematics. So when the mathematics class is happening in grade 7, you may want the child to go back to grade 5, get the mastery of the learning competencies of grade 5, move up to the grade 6 level, and then come into this class. So there has to be a sort of a very smooth and a sort of a very, boundaryless free zone in which children are allowed to learn and acquire proficiency based on their own pace, their own interest, and their own, way of learning. So we also need to remember the Cbse has said it almost 4 years back about the, the revised report card, and now NEP is harping about how we should move away from just sticking to quantitative assessments into qualitative assessments, right? So now moving ahead, who benefits? Everybody benefits. All the stakeholders will benefit when we introduce competency-based education. And why I say that is because that first problem that Bhavna ma'am had identified, the pressure on rote memory, marks, that is going to go away, and it will move in towards conceptual understanding and content-based, from content to competency-based education. Secondly, learners will be able to understand the application of the concepts and in different contexts. And what is key in CBE is that they have to consistently show that level of knowledge, skill, attitude, and behavior in order to handle issues or life in similar contexts. So it's not that we get children to learn a particular skill or knowledge to vomit it out in an exam or take part in a competition, prepare for an Olympiad. And then when in 2 months' time another Olympiad comes, we have the pressure of the child saying, but I don't have time to study for that Olympiad. Why do you need to study for an Olympiad or an exam if the learning is deep? Once you've got it, it is deep-seated. How many of us teachers, we prepare for a class, but do we go through the entire textbook and, find the word meanings of everything? No, we've all done our BEds, we've all, grounded ourselves with depth in knowledge so that we know proxy class, fine, I'll get into this class, I'll be able to take the session. That is the kind of confidence our children should have. They should not be able to say, fine, Navratri is starting on Monday, first term exams are starting on Wednesday, no problem. I'll dance and I'll also be able to do Navratri. Why do we make children feel the pressure that I have to study at that last minute before the exam? That is when we are making children learn for short durations of time just to vomit it out in the paper for the mark and then forget the rest of it for life. CBE is going to address this particular gap. They will be able to explore how the same concept or idea can be extended and applied everywhere. So something they've learned in physics in a holistic way, through a cross-cultural way, they'll suddenly find the application in the kitchen when they are cooking. So it's almost magical in the way they look at life. They will also be able to comprehend, compare, manipulate, and apply knowledge for real life in different contexts. Right? Okay. So this is what the aim of CBE is. It is to focus on the all-round development of learners so as to prepare them for the demands of the 21st century. And we all know that 21st century skills means your 6 Cs, human skills, IT skills, the whole range that is required in terms of even collaborative learning, everything which is put together. So if we want to have this change, then we need to believe in what Gandhiji had said. Be the change you want to see in the world, because the world is talking about CBE. And if we want to be part of it, then we have to initiate the change in our own schools. So school readiness is at different levels right now. Right now, we don't know where your school is. You will know exactly at what level your school is. So is it trying to understand what CBE is? I'm sure through the 4,000 people registered today for today's presentation, there would be schools that would fit into any one of these stages. So there are in all 5 stages. Your school could be in stage 1, where you're just getting acquainted to CBE, or moving along the whole spectrum, you could be at stage 3, where you know everything about what competency-based education is. And now you're going to be sitting with your coordinators, heads, teachers, and planning about how to do the gradual shift from the traditional mode to competency-based education. Or you could be a school which is like the KFI schools, the Krishnamurti schools, where actually learning is completely competency-based. They don't really focus so much on textbooks. They don't focus on marks. They are focusing on how the child is going to look at life. So when you look at the KFI kind of schools, or you look at the Finnish schools, or you look at schools which are in Singapore, there are other schools within the IB and IGCSE curriculum also. Can we request the participants? Santosh sir, can you please request the participants to mute their mic? Thank you. You could also be at the 5th level where you've already learned about it, planned it, and you are, part of the full implementation across all classes. But by and large, I think everybody is at between stage 3 and stage 4, where you have a fair amount of knowledge about what is competency-based education, but you don't know how to go about it. You have that little ignition problem about how to start. We are all very comfortable in our familiar zone, and it is always very challenging to accept change and move in for change. But hey, we are teachers. We manage the COVID time, we manage any change with any pace, and we are going to do it. I hope I'm right with that. The government of India, as you heard Bhavna ma'am say, they want, this is the product out of the Cbse and the British Council project that we are talking about. Not to say that we are going to exclude the ICSE schools or the IB and IGCSE schools, but they envision that they are going to bring into their fold 25,000 Cbse schools actually implementing competency-based education by 2024. Now, yeah, that sounds, you could be asking me, seriously? Are you really saying that? It's not possible. It's only 1.5 years away. Yeah, possible. But 1.5 years is a long time. So it's never too late to start. Why don't we start today and see how it takes us and where it takes us, right? So now moving along, the shift from traditional, where we are, to where we will be if we include competency, will cover all these 8 aspects. So now you need to focus, because now I'm going to be talking about the technical aspects. These are aspects in which competency-based education is going to impact you as teachers, your students, and your school. It's going to impact the academic outcome, the pedagogy, the complete mindset. We teachers have to change our mindset to embrace competency-based education. We have to bring into the fold the parents who need to understand what is competency-based education and why it is necessary to prepare their children for the future. We also need a support system, because the support system will envision looking at what are the resources we need, what are the spaces we need, what are the additional AI-based technical support and digital systems that we need in order to record, archive, map, and assess this kind of a learning system. The proficiency standards will have to be set. Yes, Cbse has brought out its manual, and according to the age-appropriate, grade-appropriate levels, they will be mapping out learning objectives and learning outcomes. So your competencies will get mapped to those learning outcomes. Of course, CISE has also brought out an introductory manual about the Cbe. I'll show you how to get access to it. You will also need to look at assessments, and you will need to, for the first time, look at how you are going to advance children to the next level. Yes, RT has allowed us to promote blankly all children till grade 8. We have been told not to hold back children, that all the way from pre-primary till grade 8, children have to be promoted to the next class. But competency-based education is not about which grade I am in or which seat I'm sitting on, or which is the year I am going to be handling which curriculum in which class. It's talking about me being able to handle the proficiency and mastery to do something. Would you agree if I said that there are children who are in grade 4 who are excellent in handling your mobile phone? Your little 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds probably handle it better than you. How does that happen? So there is an inherent innate quality. Plus, we have given them the opportunity to explore. You have handed the mobile phone to your little child to fool around with. Just bring that same engagement into your classrooms. Allow your children to actually fool around with learning, with lots of opportunities, learning spaces, activities, pedagogical practices, so that they also fool around, and some children will master it in no time, just as your 2-year-old picked up how to use the phone. At my age, yes, I struggle at times, and I have to go running to my son to say, can you tell me how to do this? Because I'm old. I've decided, oh God, technology, I don't want to go there anymore. But these people are digital natives. they love it. They flourish in it. They want to learn more about it because it gives them power, right? Power to learn as well, because technology can be harnessed to actually improve your learning. So when you're planning for CBE, these are the aspects you need to revamp. I'm not going to repeat. Look at the learning outcomes, look at the content, map the pedagogies, and then align your assessments towards the learning outcomes. So when you're looking at what actually competency-based education is, it means that while the subject content will continue to be the medium through which the learners will develop various competencies, the focus will shift not to the content, but to the process of learning, where in addition to what is being learned, the process will also of how the learning is happening will be equally important. Now, how do you proceed? This is now, I'm going to walk you through a stepwise process of how to proceed, right? You can refer to the manuals for competency-based education. Because Cbse has had a advanced, introduction to it with the British Council 2 years ago, the Cbse manual for competency-based education is much more comprehensive, with lot of details, lot of activities and stuff, which is ready for you to use actually. The Cise one has brought out an introductory manual, which you can see, and I have also listed where you will find it. It is a PDF, you can download it, and you'll be ready to at least understand what Cise has started with in terms of competency-based education. So this is the Cbse one, which was developed also with NCERT. So I'll just run you through about how to go about it. Go to Google. You just need to type in cbse.nic.in. And this is going to take you to the Cbse site. Go to the main website. Sorry about that. Go to the main website. These are the menus which you will see at the top. So in the menu, you then have to go to Cbse resources. When you go to Cbse resources, you will find what is competency-based education. And it will give you the features. It will also tell you how the design, teaching and learning will be impacted. This is where you will find the British Council framework, the competency-based assessment framework, learning outcomes for elementary stage and secondary stages. And you will also be able to look at the teacher's handbook resource, which is what I showed you the cover for. So they have different ones. So you can see which is the teacher's resource that is applicable for you, and you can then download it for your children and for your planning. This is for your assessments, and the project had actually included for grade 6 to grade 8. But if you remember, the board exam for the last 2 years has also given competency-based questions in MCQs for the term 1, the objective paper, and in the subjective paper, they have pushed the quality of questions into more of the competency-based zone, right? So that is how you can access these manuals. So use Google and get there. Step number 2, now how to proceed is when we go to, acquire the manuals. The step 2 is, as I said earlier, the Cbse one is very comprehensive. So go through the manual. In the teacher's resource book, you will have 3 sections. One is the pedagogical process of how that particular topic is to be handled. The second will be the learning objectives and learning outcomes. So objectives for the lesson and guidelines for measuring the objectives with learning outcomes. Once you have that, section 3 will teach you how to map the learning objectives to the learning outcomes, and hence you will be able to draw out the competency. So for that particular topic, say for example, you can see, I know the print is really fine. If any of you can zoom on your phone, you can zoom the thing and see, but it's very beautifully already ready for you. You just need to decide based on your typical lesson planning. At the end of this unit, children will be able to list your learning outcomes, and against the learning outcomes on the right-hand side, make a table about which are the competency areas. So in terms of knowledge, what do you want the children to be able to do in terms of skill and ability? And it's not to say that for every chapter, for every topic, you have to map all the learning outcomes with all 4 behavior types. No, you will have to integrate the whole thing. You'll have to integrate it in such a way that children are able to use the knowledge through the acquired skills and abilities or innate ones to perform and show you the mastery of having achieved that particular learning outcome, right? So moving on from here, Step 3 would be plan your teaching learning strategies, experiences, activities. As I said, even NEP has really harped on how learning has to now become more engaging and experiential for children. You have to keep in mind that the learning outcome target goals are explicitly shared in advance. So I know of many teachers, and I'm sure many of you also do it. At the beginning of a chapter, the way we did it, at the end of this session, you will be able to do what? Share it with your children. Let them know that in this particular topic, or if you are doing an integrated topic, that in this topic, we are going to explore this theme through all these subject domains. And this is what you're going to be able to do and achieve and learn at the end of this unit. Share it with them in advance. The journey becomes so much easier, right? And obviously, all stakeholders, if they are involved, they will be able to support and engage in the success of the CBE program better. The Cbse has also defined certain assessment design principles. So I have given the one which the Cbse manual has. There are rules and limitations on what is to be assessed in which. So please bear that in mind. This is just an example of what I have shown you, what's in the manual. Then step 5, use formative and summative assessments as per the Cbse guidelines for 6 to 10 and use the SAFL guidelines for 3, 5 and 8. Now, why do you think 3, 5 and 8 is so important right now?
स्टेशन आ गया नहीं ठीक है आप छोड़ दीजिए आप अभी इस तरफ रहेगा इस तरफ इधर से लेट तो नहीं होता है
Sorry, somebody's on their way somewhere. Yes. So please use formative and summative assessments in an ongoing manner so that you know where your children are during the journey of learning, right? So SAFL is for 358 because NEP 2020, some of the teachers believe that they are called board exams. They are not board exams. What NEP has very clearly said is they are going to be taking key stage assessments. They are called KSAs. Key stage assessments to measure and see whether the students in schools across India are attaining the competencies and learning outcomes for that specific grade's standards. So the assessment is going to be designed and conducted by the boards, definitely. It is going to be done by, the Supreme, the NTA. NTA is going to design and give it out to all the boards possible in India. I don't know whether IB and IGCSE is going to come into that fold at all, but definitely the Indian boards will. But they are called key stage assessments. The grade 3 one in the SAFL is focusing on FLN, which is your foundational literacy and numeracy. Grade 5 will have another one. So those who are in the preparatory stage classes, remember your children will be facing 2 formal key stage assessment exams. One in grade 3 and one in grade 5. And then of course you have the one which is in grade 8. And if you go through your manuals, you will see exactly how the level of learning, the type of competencies required for pre-K to grade 2, then grade 3 to grade 5, grade 6 to grade 8, there is a progressive increase in the type of skills, the type of breadth of knowledge, and the type of behavior or demonstration that the children are expected to do to show that they have attained the competencies in that particular grade, right? So then in step number 6, use the grading scheme and rubric. You are all adept at doing rubric designs, I'm sure. You've been teaching for so many years. There are many scales and many ways in which you can design the rubric, depending on the subject and depending on the task you have designed for the children. So obviously you can't use one fit-all rubric for English, math, SS, physical education, art, not possible. When you know what you want the children to achieve, you know the task that you're going to be giving, then identify the steps in the task and then create the rubric of to what extent that particular step in the task has been achieved. And use the grading scheme in order to tell the children also why they have achieved what they have achieved. And finally, share the assessment outcome and prepare the students for advancement to the next level, right? So CBE, Gandhiji's advice again, if we have done, we have prepared ourselves for the change, we want to be the change we want to see, then many publishers have also embraced the change they want to see. So here is an example of one of the textbooks. In this particular textbook, the way the lessons have been planned, you'll be able to see it covers knowledge, skill, ability, and behavior. Here is an example. So this is an English example where there is a writing activity given at the end of the book. So let's go back. Let's retrace our steps to what is the learning objective and learning outcome for that particular grade in English. So here is a chapter, chapter number 2. The learning objectives is related to the chapter, but note also how the appreciation of the language part has also been mapped into the learning objectives and learning outcomes. So in the writing part, you will see in the learning outcomes, the second aspect, writes formal letters, personal diary, lists, email, SMS, email. So now this activity is mapped to the second one. In this one, the children are going to be able to explore different types of text. So that addresses the first learning outcome, answering questions orally or in writing on the variety of text, both familiar, unfamiliar, across various genres of text as well. And finally, the last learning outcome, a lot of the books have now started including dictionary activity. So as far as this lesson's learning objectives and outcomes are concerned, you can map a rubric which says to what extent the child has actually attained, either being able to appreciate and answer questions on a variety of texts or write letters or even do the kind of vocabulary and dictionary activity that was required. This is the socio and emotional learning one where you have the generalized, standardized learning expected competencies in the middle. And then you have on the left-hand side to what degree a particular child needs to work in a particular area or to what degree a child has advanced and has exceeded the expectations which are listed in the middle, right? Now here is one which is on water cycle. I'm sure many of the teachers in SS will love it. So here's a water cycle one in which we have talked about how in which day. This again is a very detailed plan, but if you notice the criteria, the second column, it talks, look at column number 2 and column number 3. Delivery of answers to oral questions. All questions correctly in great detail and all questions summarized and important points discussed, right? So this is how the rubric has been designed for this particular session. This is the lesson on day 2. Notice how the criteria has now changed to collaborating with peers, being creative with a particular product or writing piece. Then there is also the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy, which is the level of recall. Then the speaking skills are also being assessed. And then finally on day 3, they have also included cross-cultural assessment, which includes the child going into creating a web page through HTML coding, being able to do something with that, which is mapped to the topic of water cycle. Here's another one. This is again, I'll just hide these so that you're able to see it. This is about music literacy. So the first competency area is literacy, means do I understand music? Am I able to read music? Do I appreciate music? Do I understand what the music is meaning to me? What does it mean to me? The second competency is performing for music. That means I have a knowledge of what music is, how it can be created to different things, and I pick up a skill to play an instrument in order to create music. So that is the second competency that is being looked at for CBE for music. Moving along, this is geography. So when you do criterion referenced assessments, the first criteria is knowledge and understanding. The second one is usually skill-based. And D is, when you go down the scale, criterion D is applying your knowledge to everyday life and real life context, right? So let's look at this one. For this particular topic, this is knowledge and understanding level. That was the rubric. This was the question that has been posed to the children, right? And we have given you 2 sample answers. Explain why a hot desert may form near mountains in a rain shadow. So one sample answer is a mountain may block the winds and make a hot desert in rain shadow. One child in your class has written that. The other child in your class has written this long answer, which has been given as sample number 2. Now, when you look at the scale, you will find that the first answer is okay for level 3 or 4. the second answer fits level 5 or 6. Look at the difference in the answer given by the children and how you will now be able to assess the competency of the child in learning about hot deserts that form near mountains in the lee side, right, of the mountains. Sample 3, this is even better. Same question, another child has written this answer. And clearly, this one has exceeded the expectations, and this is level 8. This is in mathematics. Let's look at Criterion D, where we are expecting children to know a certain math topic and then take it into real life connotation. So these in Criterion D, there are 3 aspects: identifying relevant elements of authentic life situations, selecting appropriate mathematical strategies, and applying the selected strategy to reach a solution that has been posed as a problem. This is your rubric for assessing mathematics for an activity in competency-based education, a suggested one. You may want to design your own. So now let's look at some of the question and answers in mathematics. So here is a question. There is an arrow with certain dimensions, and they have clearly identified 2 areas, which is the VIP sitting space, which is the triangular portion, and then they have the rectangular portion, which is the common seating space, which is for the other people, right? So the first question that is asked, which is starting at a warm-up level, is writing down only the dimensions for the spaces, the VIP seating space and the common seating space, right? So when we look at over here, the question is related to the very first strand of Criterion D, which is the first one. So we'll plug that in over here. Now, how do we assess this in terms of competency-based education? We will have to see to what extent the child was able to identify either only one element, 2 elements, 3 elements, or all 4 elements in the questions that have been asked. With the same question, now let's move up a little higher level. Now we want them to actually calculate the area, which means we are now moving to strand 2. We are selecting an appropriate mathematical strategy when solving a real life problem, right? So again, when we look at the challenge of how you want to assess the learning, then this could be a appropriate level-wise rubric and guidance for how you want to rate the children against this topic. Now, this one is obviously on physics, so I'll just hide this out. This is about scalar and vector quantities. You must be all familiar with it. This is a standardized rubric, which is usually used for science-based subjects. So this being the question, here is one answer. Scalar quantity has only magnitude compared to vector quantity. One child has written this. So where do you think you would place this answer? Would you place it in level 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, or even 7 and 8? So let me see some responses in the chat. Where would you put this answer? Come on, participants, quickly. Sample answer 1, what would you rate the child? Would you put the child for level 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, or 7 and 8? 1 and 2, okay. Some more responses. I'm waiting for your responses. Okay, level 3, 1 to 3, but it's not even in the rubric scale. Okay, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Clearly, the 1 and 2 ones have got it right. It is level 1 and 2 because it is only mentioning one element in the differentiation, right? So this is how you will get an idea of how to go about it. All right, now be ready with your little gadgets. Now I'm going to ask you to rate this one. Now this child, in answer to the same question, has drawn a table and has then given the differentiation. Now what would you rate this child? Clearly not 1 and 2. So would it be 3 and 4 or 5 and 6 or even 7 and 8? So let's see the responses. 5 and 6, okay, that's the first. 7 and 8, 3 and 4, okay. 5 and 6, 5 and 6, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. Okay, thank you. So let's see what the teacher had actually rated the child. This was 5 and 6, right? Now you will ask me why. Some of you who had rated 3 and 4, or some of you had even given 7 and 8. So supposing you wanted this child to achieve 7 and 8, perhaps what the child could have done is added these elements to the answer, right? So if the child had, in addition to these 2 points, added, say, these 3 points, the child would have reached the 7 and 8 scale. So these are also differences of scalar and vector. Plus, if you notice the last point, you know, in the outline which is given, is being able to suggest examples from real life, then you know clearly the child knows that this is one-dimensional scalar, where only the speed of the car is being talked about, and the vector one is where direction is also included. So if that were to be given as a real life example, then the child would definitely have got A. So that is competency-based education. Now here, this is chemistry. So chemistry teachers, this is now your time. This is a question on the periodic table, and they are looking at how to arrange these in the increasing order of ionization energy, right? That's a question that has been posed by the teacher. And we want to see how to rate the children in this particular exercise, right? So I'm going to open my chat window again in my gadget and see how you're going to respond. So here is one answer. Ionization energy increases across a period and ionization energy decreases down a group. So how will you rate this child's answer in terms of this rubric for that question that you have asked? Okay, 1 and 2. I've got 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Absolutely right. This child has no knowledge in terms of any depth or conceptual understanding and is only able to put down one thing that the child has remembered from the learning experience, which means we have to reach out to the child, support the child, and fill in the gaps and figure out where is it that the child has not understood the elements of a periodic table or the concept of ionization energy. Now here is answer number 2. It's a long one. I'm going to give you a few minutes to read, and then you can tell me where you would rate this child. Okay, 5 and 6, we've already started. 7 and 8. Yes, this is a beautifully phrased answer, but let's see what the teacher who designed this particular lesson and the rubric is going to award this child in terms of the attainment of the competency, right? Thank you, teachers, for your participation. Absolutely right. The child has been given 7 and 8. The answer shows adequate knowledge and understanding worthy of full achievement level of competencies. Now your turn, biology. Describe the function of the below mentioned parts of the leaf, epidermis, cuticle, palisade, mesophyll, right? Here is the rubric. This is one of the answers. What would you rate this answer? So I'm actually taking you into your classroom. I'm making you assess children through CBE level of how you're going to actually handle the instruction, learning, and assessment part of competency-based education. Okay? I see 5, 6, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. Lot of you have said 3, 4. This teacher had a very long expectation, right? Now let's see the second one. Sample answer. Now I know why that one was given 1 and 2. This answer is beautifully laid out. And this is something we always teach children even when they are preparing for the, the high stake exams, like your board exams. We always ask them, put your answer in points. Keep your language crisp. Remember to use the keywords. Don't we do that? So when you look at an answer like this, clearly in one shot, you get to know with the first words on each paragraph that the child has the concept in mind. Then you read through the fine print and you decide that fine, this child has written, but there's something still missing. So I would award the child 5 or 6. So basically coming back to this, the success of CBE will ride on how each of us, not only just the teachers who are going to guide the CBE, but in terms of the school support system that is going to complement what the teachers are going to do, the learners themselves understanding what CBE is, and of course, getting the parents to understand why CBE is important for the long-term goals of having your children lead life with satisfaction, right? So if we are talking about a change in the mindset, We are talking about actually immersing yourself into the CBE program, not to treat it as something which is outside that you're going to use sometime and then put it back on the shelf. Oh, I'll use it for chapter number 3, but I'll put it away for 4, 5, 6 and switch back to my traditional method. No way, that's not going to work. You're going to be breathing, living, and actually immersing yourself in CBE in such a way that that is what is going to be running in your circulatory system for anything you do in future with the children in school, right? So it's an inner transformation which will have outer implications. The students themselves will know what, why, how, where, and when of the learning process because they will take charge for their own learning. The teachers, of course, will know the what, why, how, where, when of facilitating, planning for, facilitating, instructing, guiding, mentoring, supporting, and assessing. And not just assessing, also giving constructive feedback for advancement. So that is one point you could add for the teachers. Parents are part of the evolution and realignment of the learning system because if you don't have their support, it cannot happen only in the school environment. A whole concept of education, a whole style of learning is successful only when it is a similar scenario across home and school. So the more we engage the people in the home to support us with a new pedagogical approach, the more successful it will be. So when you plan activities which are for home, please keep in mind the competency-based education approach and give activities that the child will be able to do beyond the textbook or going to a tuition class or asking a parent who knows more than your textbook, right? So you also need to be very smart and very innovative and very creative in planning all these. And finally, of course, the school. In the way that the school is going to update its educational resources, support systems, IT platform, the student and societal needs, and contribute to shaping the students for the 21st century as productive citizens, right? A very key element of where you are today is don't make the school tell you, you have to go through the training for this. Ask yourself, if I was to do CBE today in my class, am I ready? Which means you have to actually rewind the clock to understanding, do I know what is Bloom's taxonomy properly? Do I know how to frame a lesson plan? So first of all, do I know my subject very well? So these are questions which you should be asking yourself today, even before the school says, okay, teachers come, we are planning on actually embracing CBE in our school and we have to plan for it. You can work on something if you are prepared for it for yourself, right? So when you're looking at lesson planning, you have to look at all these aspects. Are you really empowered? Are you competent? Are you aware of all these aspects that are going to be impacted if you were to bring in competency-based education into your classroom? So depth of subject content and lesson planning and assessment, which means you have to know what the NEP is expecting of you. You have to know exactly how to do lesson planning with overarching goals. Then you have your learning objectives, learning outcomes, learning indicators, and mapping the competencies to the outcomes and indicators. So if you don't know the difference between learning objectives, learning outcomes, learning indicators, and competencies mapped, then you need to revisit these concepts very well, because without these, CBE cannot be planned, cannot be framed, cannot be designed, right? You will also have to take into account that you have to move from the first 3 levels of Bloom's into the next 3 levels. So when you are framing activities, when you're framing assessments, when you're framing just simple oral quizzes, go beyond what is just recall, understand, and apply. Start getting children to analyze. Give them opportunities where they can actually sit in pairs and think, share knowledge with each other, evaluate each other's answers, form an opinion from it, and suggest something new, which they have thought about based on their knowledge, skill, ability, attitude, and behavior, right? Of course, all these points you can look at. You are familiar with all of them. Explicit goals and expectations, your varied opportunities, assessment strategies, rubrics, timely and positive constructive feedback, peer review and self-review, which I talked about as assessment as learning, and remembering that advancement can only happen when the child has attained the previous level. Most of the time today, I think we are so stressed out with the time in school, having to finish chapters. And if the child has got 30%, 40%, we let the child go through, we start a new chapter without addressing the 70% that the child didn't understand or the 60% that the child didn't understand. Pass ho gaya na, theek hai. वो समझ जाएगा, सीख जाएगा. That is usually what happens, and I'm not blaming anyone. It's just the way the system works. And yes, definitely look inside and ask yourself, yes, NEP has told you 50 hours of CPD per year. Your heads are also going to do 50 hours of CPD. What is it that you need? In those 50 hours, are you just going to turn on your mobile, switch off the video, let it babble on? Or are you really going to enrich and empower yourself so that you can take in these new strategies that NEP has talked about, of which competency-based education is one of them, right? And as Abdul Kalam has very rightly said, Dr. Abdul Kalam, that our role is to build capacities in children, not to fill in content and knowledge. So capacities in children in the spirit of inquiry. So we have to allow them to question. Creativity, where they're going to bring out their own ideas. Entrepreneurial and moral leadership by becoming their role model. That means if we want children to be like this, it begins with you. So you have to build your own capacity. You will have to develop a spirit of inquiry. You have to start being creative and innovative and entrepreneurial and moral, ethical in every way, to stand out like somebody. When children look up to you, they will want to be who you are, right? So that's it in terms of the presentation. And I think we've done well with time, which gives us a lot of time for question and answers. So thank you very much for this platform. Bhavna ma'am and I are very happy to have been able to share the concept of competency-based education with you. And I will also take this, I'll leave this slide on, but I will now stop sharing because Neelam ma'am can now take up and tell us how to proceed from here. Yes, Neelam ma'am.
Then some minutes.
I think Neelam ma'am isn't there. So Santosh sir, how would you like to take it from here? How are we going to handle the questions? So would you like to write your responses either in the YouTube comment box or in the Zoom chat? Did you feel that you learned something new about competency-based education today? Would somebody like to share? Or if you have been actually exercising and using competency-based education in your classroom, we would love to hear about it. It'll be wonderful if you can share how you have brought in Cbe into your classroom. Any one of you, you can unmute yourself and just speak. How is peer assessment done? Okay. How to access the Cbe related material on Cbse, all right?
So sorry, just running around the school a bit. Just.
Principals are very busy, ma'am, completely pardoned. We know you are doing more important things.
I'm really sorry, I just came running from the hall, yeah.
So we have a couple of queries on the chat box. Somebody would like to again see how to download the Cbse manual on Cbe. So I will run that link again. It's actually very easy. It's on cbse.nic.in. Somebody wants to know about peer assessment. Flip teaching, can it be incorporated as CBL? Yes, definitely. Competency-based learning is also about skills. So flip teaching is, it's a technique, and CBL is an approach to how learning is being done, right? So how you're going to be adding on and increasing your information and knowledge and, learning new things, that is a different approach, okay? Any more questions? Sharing real life experiences. Yes, I had to do that because you are teachers. You want something that you can take into the classroom tomorrow. And I've been a teacher, I've done it. So I know what you're looking for. You don't want theory all the time. So we decided we wanted to give you something which you can start working on immediately. And yes, of course, the NCF is going to be coming out. Most probably the first draft should be shared by March of next year is what we are hearing in the education fraternity. If the NCF comes out, then you will definitely have a very detailed guideline about how to go about planning the learning objectives, learning outcomes, which are standardized, means standards based. And from that, you'll be able to map your competencies for CBE, right? Cbse portal. Yeah, okay. Attendance link, I don't have control on that. That somebody else will have to give you. Yes, okay. So coming to one of the questions. So Kritika ma'am, would you like to share it? I can take a break. And Kritika ma'am, if you're there, would you like to share with the teacher the concept of peer assessment? Is Kritika ma'am there? Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. A very good evening to all of you. Okay, so peer assessment is definitely something that a lot of teachers would like to implement in the classrooms, but then we see it as a huge challenge because we are not very sure if it is all right to be asking students to assess their classmates or their age mates. The idea is, like Ishita ma'am and Bhavna ma'am have already pointed out, is that when we talk about competency-based learning and competency-based education, then when we begin, we have to make the learning outcomes very clear. And it is not just the learning outcomes, but the assessment rubrics. So what are you going to assess the students on? Every child has to know that. And at the same time, every child has to know the your learning outcomes, the competencies that they will be assessed on. They have to be clearly displayed in the classroom. I hope I'm audible. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So the learning outcomes and the competencies that the children are expected to master, to be proficient in, they have to be very clearly communicated, not only to the children, but also to the parents. Once that is done, before we start a lesson, before we start a topic, the children are absolutely clear on what they are expected to learn and what they are expected to display. So the evidence of the learning, evidence of the attainment of proficiency in a particular competency has to be displayed. That evidence has to be there. And if all the children know that, if the students in the classroom know what they are learning and what they will be assessed on, then it is very easy for us to ask them to assess their peers about if they have, in their understanding, if their classmate, their friend, or the partner that they're working with in a paired activity or in a group activity, if the other participants have displayed those competencies. And for that, we also need to, like I said, the clear communication of rubrics, of assessment rubrics. That has to be, again, displayed before we ask for peer assessment. Because it cannot be vague, it cannot be ambiguous, it cannot be based on the personal opinion of these students, but on the display of clear and solid evidence. So once that is done, let us take an example of a simple, let's say a simple maths activity, a maths competency of, say, students being able to, if we are talking of, say, geometry. So 3D figures, let's say. So if we are talking of mensuration, say finding out areas and volumes, and that activity that can be given as a group task to various children. And before we ask them to assess their peers, they have to understand that, say, the given competencies that a child is able to identify. A, the child can identify the 3D figure that is given to them. B, the child is able to not just identify the figure, but also find out what is the length, breadth, and the height of that figure. Say if it's a cube or a cuboid, or if it's a sphere, then determine the radius or the diameter. They need to understand that. Those terms, that clarity. And then the formula. So they have to know the formula, and then are they able to apply the formula to find out the area or volume of that figure? These things have to be clearly communicated, that these are the things they are expected to know, and these are the things that they're expected to display. Now, once that activity is being carried out in class, that those, say, a cricket ball or a cuboid, a geometry box, or say a duster or a cylindrical figure has been given to them, and they are calculating those, that's when the different groups are working on different geometrical objects. Then the teacher can go around the classroom, be with the students, see how they are discussing it, and if they are facing any problem in the determination of the, say, the radius or the length or the circumference of that figure. And once that, the teacher is just observing. Right now, she doesn't need to correct. We don't need to correct, or we don't need to check them. Then after that, with every group, the teacher will just sit, look at the answers that they have come out with, and then ask the participants, okay, who provided this? Or who had a problem in understanding that, okay, there's a difference between the length and breadth and height. So who was confused? Do you think any of you were confused in between the breadth and the height, say? So questions like this can be asked, and based on the feedback from these students, they can be given a point scale, say, okay, in the determination of the given figures, say, the calculation of the height of the areas and volumes, who provided the formula, or who was confused about this. So just say one on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 3 even, the students can be asked to provide feedback, and that can help with that. This is just an example of a maths problem that I'm just thinking of offhand. And if anything else that
I think the rubrics really would help. If the
Yes,
teacher can
absolutely.
help the students, provide them with the rubric, and I think their judgment would be much fairer and just. So
yes, and children can be very, very insightful. You know, sometimes as adults, we kind of get into a sort of, well, I have sort of experienced it when I was teaching in the early years, and I remembered how to overcome it because I wanted to shoot for equity in the classroom. You know, you take the best child's answer as a ballpark, as a parameter, and then you start judging all the other children's answers accordingly. So similarly, when you want to do formative assessment as learning, then you must tell your children that the comparison is not with another child who is very good in the class, or with himself, or with his neighbor. The child has to compare based on the criteria given in the rubric. So say, for example, in English, you were writing an acrostic poem. So an acrostic poem has very simple rules. You need to use the letters of the word in the particular vertical order, and then frame lines of the poem with the first letter being there, or you can even substitute the letter in a word which is in the poem, right? So when you give these criteria that it must use all the letters of the word that has been presented, you may even want to shoot for a rhyming poem. So that could be an added criteria. So if a person has achieved using all the letters with a rhyme and has been able to use grade level vocabulary, the child shoots for 7 to 8 level. If the child has not been able to think of a sentence with each of the letters of the word, the child may be in 1 and 2. So again, you can have the children assess their peers' work through this way. Or you could be having a healthy debate in the classroom about whether uniforms are necessary in school. Now you can have, you have debates, you have rebuttals, you have, the for and against, and you should only be an observer at that time. Let the children assess their peers and come out whether they were convinced with the person's argument or not. Or if they started with, no, I believe in XYZ because her arguments were better. Then she hears a rebuttal round, listens to other points and says, I'm sorry, but I think I've changed my opinion because with these points, which I had not thought about, I wish to agree with this person. So what is happening? You are assessing the peer and seeing how effective the peer has been in convincing you with new knowledge. You have been able to acquire new knowledge and use it in the context of how you want to see live. Okay, so I'm going to, for all of you who are waiting on where to get the Cbse thing, I'm going to now share with you. I'll just shut off the confusing slides. Okay. And I will go to this one. Can you all see this? Bhavna ma'am, you can guide.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you all know this is the Cbse site. So basically we need to go to the main website. Yes, it always gives me this message, but then it shines and smiles. Here you will want to go to the quick navigation side where there is academics. So go to academics. Go to Cbe resources. It's already there. You can see Cbe resources. See where the mouse is pointing. When you click on Cbe resources, you will come to this page. When you scroll down, it will tell you what is competency-based education, the key features, the curriculum design, teaching, learning, and assessment aspects, what are the benefits. And then you can come here. And then you go to teachers resources. When you come to teachers resources, you will get the energized resource manuals for the various grades. So pick up the one that you want to use. It's all here. So this is basically the site. This gives you the learning framework. This gives you the teacher resources. This gives you the assessment part of competency-based education. And this will give you the P-stage assessment. This is a PDF file. You can easily download. This is the one I talked to you about, or rather, Bhavna ma'am talked about how Safal is giving you the guidance for competency-based learning for the key stage assessments, which are going to be taken in grades 3, 5, and 8, right? So this is the manual. It's completely downloadable, and you can see how best to work with it. So I hope you've all got it, right? So I'll stop sharing. I hope that was useful for you. Yes, Neelam ma'am, if you are free now, and we would like to hear something from you, and in what way your school is either getting ready or has experimented with competency-based education, or if anybody else would like to unmute themselves and share. How will it be ensured that there is standardization of Cbe pan-India? Yes, that there are going to be hiccups in this journey. We have all been through the process of what happened with CCE, if you remember, continuous and comprehensive.
It died its death.
Yes. So yes, there will be challenges. Nobody said that it's going to come like a ready-made manual and you just follow it to the T, and then there's going to be standardized, stuff everywhere. It's not going to happen. There are many reasons for it, because India is large. We also have this concept of the state boards which are there for education, because education is in the concurrent list. So we also have the states having a say in education, which means the state board curriculum will also have to map itself to CBE if they want to implement in NEP 2020. And thirdly, I think we have to wait for the NCF to see what is the guideline, because one of the driving forces in chapter 4 is about activity-based learning, competency-based learning and assessment, about engaging learning, about knowledge of India, everything in a holistic approach.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, so yes, for Pan-India, it will take a while, but I have always been one of those passionate, positive educators who believe that if you want to make a change, if you really want to do something in the interest of children, we can make it happen. Okay, any more questions? Thank you, Preeti ma'am, for putting it here from the YouTube, because I was not able to view YouTube. Preeti Yadav ma'am, thank you for posting that question.
Okay,
For
good
CBL,
evening.
what should be the ideal strength of a class? I'll just take that one question, Neelam ma'am. If you want to say in India, you're going to work with a wonderful 15 to 20 in a class, it's not going to happen. We Indians are so many. We are happy Indian, highly populated country. We want everyone to be happy. We want everyone to be educated. And yes, ideal size, you need to know what is humanly possible to do within the time frame that you do. So yes, what you can do is work around it, in the sense that typically our classes have about 35 to 40 children, if I'm not mistaken. There are some places which have higher than that, which is highly not recommended. And then there are those very nice schools where you don't have more than 24 children in a class. But anywhere between 30 to 40 is good. However, if you are planning activities and certain strategies in which you're going to have children scattered in an area, it would be a good idea to have a support teacher. In that case, competency-based education is going to completely flourish, because you're only observing the learning process as it's unfolding in front of you, and you will be taking the anecdotal records, right? So number of children, I don't think it works, because in competency-based education, you can even have a 60 strength class doing a think, pair, share activity and making knowledge emerge from that, share with that. You can have project-based learning happening with 10 project ideas from one topic with 5 groups per project. Learning is going to be a lot of fun. So I don't think we should get caught with the number of children that are in the class. We can work around with strategies and support systems that can still help us to bring CBE into the classroom. I hope I was able to answer that.
Ishita ma'am, I'd just like to add a little bit here, that I know it is seems like a very daunting task, carrying out a competency-based activity in a class of 50 or say 40 students. But what can be done as a start is to select a few topics or a few chapters per subject, and then devise some activities that will make the students also a little more hands-on about what is it that you are actually driving towards. And as a department, say the department of, and of course, we are also talking of integration now. So that's another thing that will help us a lot here.
Absolutely.
So if all of us can sit together and decide on a few activities just to begin with for one term, we don't necessarily have to switch to totally a CBE based system in all subjects.
So,
So small baby steps where the whole team works together and in an integrated way. That will also help the students understand how to they'll get more used to not depending on textbooks and not just sitting in a classroom, but being active participants and being ready for what is to come. So that can be a start.
Yes, absolutely. And having said that, I think probably that is why the international boards, the core of their curriculum is competency-based education, which is why IB schools don't have textbooks. They look at a theme, they explore it from all aspects. So in a very natural process, there is a cross-cultural
curriculum.
Core curriculum and extracurriculars all embedded within it. There isn't a fixed time frame, that in 40 minutes I have to finish this aspect of the theme. It is a freely flowing discovery and a journey of learning where children take their own time at their own pace. The only tweaking that the teacher does is ensures that she knows her learners so well, she's able to put them into the groups that will support learning happening and advancing in that group.
Yes, Neelam ma'am. It's 5 o'clock and
don't see the watch. You want to know that 30 minutes are over, so class is over. It's not that. So dear teachers, I think you must have increased your experience and also some new learning tools. Yeah, I hope that. Learning has no limit at all.
Absolutely.
You can learn even from the animals.
Yes.
We have one animal hospital run by Petty Trust. I look after that hospital. Whenever I go, I have Kutta Billi there. So I also learn from Kutta Billi something at least. I found that if you love somebody, even the cat also, Kutta Billi also, so they also respond to you in a loving manner.
Yes.
So learning is never any no limit for this particular thing. Very importantly, I want to share with you, people are having a concept last 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, that we are taking we means everybody is taking a training session because NEP policy has come. I beg to differ with all educators. In the everyday topic, they want to support it, any arguments, they always use the word NEP. So if I remove the word NEP, that means in India, there will be no training of anybody.
No, not possible.
Right?
That's not true. That's not true.
NEP has only given one thing to us, or which has brought to the mind of all of us, that foundation is important. Like any building, the foundation is good, building will sustain 100 years life. So similarly for children, the foundation is good, they will really they will make their careers. That is only the message from the NEP. This I must clarify that training sessions are not due to NEP, but it is the vision of various organizations, including our associations, to have a continuous training sessions. Now, next session for the pre-primary school teachers, because they are the founder of the education of tender children. So I think that is we are going to conduct through the same team on 1st October 2022. And one more thing, I request all three experts, Bhavna, Ishita, and Kritika, that I think you arrange one more good session for all our young young teachers. So you decide a date and a topic. So that is our request to you.
Okay, yes, sir. Sure.
And I personally, on behalf of our USF, pay our gratitude to the expert team for sparing your time and guiding our young teachers. So we are always with you. We want a continuous training sessions to all of you, right?
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
we are very glad that you spared your time, shared your experience, and this is the experience of our teachers.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Team Quadrec. Thank you very much. I'll also thank Team Nanavati for being such a huge host.
Oh, yes.
And all my employees who've done a great job. And as Sir says, we look forward to very many more constructive sessions from you. Thank you, Kedia, sir, for these wonderful ongoing continuous training sessions. In fact, we are in a CC with him all the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, teachers, for your participation, sparing your time on Saturday afternoon. Instead of going for picnic or outing, you are with us. Really thankful to you for your participation. Thank you, Neelam, once again for your total cooperation.
Thank you, sir. Honored and privileged. Honored and privileged. Yes.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And happy Dashera to everyone.
Happy Dashera. Sir, may I end the meeting, please?
Bhavna has to say yes or no.
Oh, sir, please. Absolutely. Whatever. Thank you so much.
Thank you, wonderful ladies.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Happy Navratri. Happy Dashera.
Arjun Tandon, he did not break our, he did not create any viral problem.
No, sir. No, sir. Thankfully. Thankfully. Ji. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Santosh, if you'll end the meeting, please.